This episode of Budget MTG Decks is sponsored by TCG Player, the best place to buy your cards in the US. Welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All the cards you see in our videos are $1 or less, with exception of the Commander cards. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. I'm David.
I'm Jasper.
And today we're going to be playing a fun and effective unblocked constructed deck you can build without breaking the bank. And today we have a cool blue-black control deck for you. And what is going to be the strategy of this deck, Jasper?
Yeah, so if you think you were playing control in the past, you are wrong, because this lets us control not only how the game goes, but how a player speaks and acts. So we're going to control them that way, then we're going to whittle them down with some very annoying creatures and hopefully annoy them into scooping.
Exactly, so this is the essence of control, this deck. It cannot get more control than this. And it's actually also pretty affordable. The whole deck comes to a little bit below $10. The sideboard is a little bit over $4. So together for about $14, you have the entire deck and sideboard. So now let's have a look at the deck list, group by category.
So first, let's take a look at our hand control cards. We've got 4 copies of Volra's Motion Sensor, 4 copies of Farewell to Arms, and 4 copies of Handcuffs. Now these cards all individually control what your opponent does with their hands and punishes them for not doing it. But of course, if you get multiple copies out or multiple cards, then it gets really pretty much impossible for your opponent to do. So Volra's Motion Sensor, they have to balance a card on their hand or get punished. Farewell to Arms, they have to hold a hand behind their back or get punished. And of course, Handcuffs, their hands have to constantly be touching or get punished. And trying to do multiple things together just going to work and going to make them take damage, discard their hand, and sacrifice permanents.
Yeah, pretty rough. Then we have 4 copies of Dirty Rat. That's basically just a little 1/1 that comes in, but it makes our target opponent discard a card. So that's again hand disruption, whittling down the cards that they have available to them.
Yes. Then next up we have verbal control cards. We have 4 copies of Sorry, 2 copies of Rod of Spanking, and then 4 copies of Hangman. Sorry, of course, punishes our opponents for playing cards with multiple cards with the same name, and of course it also punishes them for saying sorry when they're not playing something. Rod of Spanking is just a good repeatable source of damage that does more damage if your opponent doesn't thank you for damaging them. And then finally we've got Hangman, which basically comes down for 1 black mana, can become a very big creature, especially if you choose a word like Syzygy.
Yeah, very nice. Then we have a 2 copies of Graveyard Busybody and 2 copies of Anime Dead. Graveyard Busybody counts all of the graveyards as our graveyard, and it's going to be really huge because it's going to count the number of cards in all graveyards, because they're our graveyard, as for the number of cards with flavor text, and that's how big it's going to be. And Anime Dead is going to be basically your library is going to become a creature with power and toughness equal to the cards in your library. So both of these can be extremely large. And also remember that since all graveyards are also our graveyard, we can play stuff from other people's graveyards as if they were our own, which could be relevant as well.
Then next up we have the removal spell. We have 3 copies of Foul Play and 3 copies of Foul Play turns any creature it enchants into a 1/1 chicken. It's a very good way to get around indestructible, stuff like that, and basically almost anything in the game is more dangerous than a 1/1 chicken. And then of course, it's a black 1 mana instant that destroys almost any creature because most creatures have reminder text, and reminder text makes them an excellent target for
Yeah, for just 1 black mana instant speed removal, that is pretty sweet. Okay, now we move on to the lands. We have 13 swamps, 11 islands, and that is it. No non-basic lands, so that's pretty much it. We move now on to the sideboard.
So now let's take a look at the sideboard. First up, we've got 4 copies of Blurry Beeble, which are very efficient beaters if you're playing against someone like David who has perfect eyesight. Then next up we have 3 copies of Bureaucracy. To save you all a bunch of headache and zooming in on the video, it basically boils down to at each player's upkeep they must do an action, then add another action to the list, and then the next player has to perform all the actions on the list and add a new one. And if anyone doesn't perfectly perform all the actions on the list, they have to discard their whole hand.
That is pretty rough. It's going to get really complicated really fast. Then we have Denied, Kill, Destroy, and Old-Fashioned Vampire. Denied is basically just a counter spell. Kill, Destroy is just a removal spell. but we can actually get it back from the graveyard. And Old Fashioned Vampire is just a pretty sweet 5/5 death touching flyer if we're playing at night. And that's of course the reason why sideboard, because if we're not playing at night, we don't want to put this one in. But it is actually really efficient for 5 mana, really efficient creature. That is it for the sideboard cards. Let's have a look at 2 example starting hands.
Now let's take a look at some example starting hands. Now the first hand starts out very efficiently. You've got Dirty Rats on turn 2 and then some removal on turn 3. You've got some backup and of course Farewell to Arms, which matches to our game plan of controlling our opponent's hands. Second hand is a little more control oriented. You do start out with a very efficient beater in the form of Hangman. You can sink a lot of mana into it to force your opponent to make it bigger. Then you've got the Paddle to ping down early creatures. And then of course you've got the motion sensor and the handcuffs for our hand control plan.
Pretty sweet. That is it for the starting hands. Have a look at some non-budget upgrades.
So some examples of good non-budget upgrades for a deck like this, while keeping it unblock constructed legal, are cards like Censorship, which punish your opponents again for saying certain words, which of course goes very well with our general strategy. Of course, for example, if you have Rod of Spanking, you can say thank as the word. Your opponent can't thank you without taking damage, so it untaps so they take the damage from the Rod of Spanking anyway. Ashnod's Coupon can also be very annoying because you can order something obscure like goat milk and then make your opponent leave the table for 45 minutes while they try to figure out where the hell they can buy it. You can call over a judge, say your opponent walked away, get a free win. And then of course Jester Sombrero, you bring it in game 1 and you basically eat up their sideboard so that they have nothing to sideboard in against you on game 2 and 3.
That is all pretty rough.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys have seen that this is truly the only true control deck that you should be playing. Let us know what you think about it in the comments below. That is it. Thank you very much for watching. I'm David.
I'm Jasper.
And this was Budget MTG Decks. Find all the cards discussed in this video in the description below. Also, show you're a fan of the channel by rocking this awesome Budget MTG Decks merchandise. This show was made possible by the support of our loyal patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donate as little as $1 per month.